Sense of building a solo that I've ever heard in well, a musician across the board for any instrument. I wonder how that came about.
Well, I think basically a lot of what I've played comes out of my influences. You know what I mean, and as to who I've listened to, and I've tried to emulate, I guess, what has excited me about a solo, you know, whoever it was at the time, and then just tried to sort of take all the bits out of, you know, the different influences that I have and try and make, you know, it into one sort of new, hopefully pretty exciting sort of thing, you know.
Yeah. Can we go back to the start? What originally attracted you to the guitar? How did you first get into playing guitar?
I think, there was always sort of music on around my house when I was, you know, ever since I can remember. My parents were music lovers. They weren't musicians, but they loved music. And from a very early age, I wanted to be a drummer. Like, I wanted to be, I think, you know, I was hearing bands like, so this was around sort of probably 1980 or whatever. It was like bands like Dire Straits and The Police, and I love the sound of the drums in those bands. And then when I was about 12, I was looking through my dad's record collection, and I found a Led Zeppelin record. It was Led Zeppelin 2, and I got him to put it on, and from that moment it was just like, wow, I'm playing the guitar, you know, Jimmy Page, you know, so it was his fault. Really, yeah.
So it was the classic rock thing then?
Absolutely, yeah. From then it sort of went Led Zeppelin, and then I got into Cream, and Jimi Hendrix was another really big one. Who else? Deep Purple, Ritchie Blackmore, you know, the sort of early Deep Purple stuff. Then I got into Queen. I was a huge Brian May fan. And it's interesting, I think the Queen thing is what led on to jazz, because Brian May plays very much, when he solos, he's very conscious of the chordal structure that he's playing over, which is what jazz is all about. It's about playing sort of over chord progressions, and some of Queen's music had quite complicated chords within it. So yeah, I think it was just a natural sort of stepping stone to go to the jazz from there.
When you took up the guitar, was it good? Did you have teachers? Were you self-taught? I
was self-taught up until I had to get a teacher for when I was in year 12, and in order to sort of, you know, meet the requirements of the examiners or whatever it was, I had to have a teacher. I mean, I thought I was doing fine by myself, and I was probably doing okay, but I ended up getting a teacher in year 12, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me, especially for jazz. There really is a lot of sort of, well, not a lot, but an amount of background knowledge that you need to have explained to you. I think sort of you know, just the whole chord scale relationship thing, and how to voice chords, and yeah.
Who was the teacher?
His name was Paul Whitney, and he was a great teacher, and he put me on to like all the sort of the jazz I was listening to at that stage was very much out of the, you know, the James Morrison kind of school. It was very sort of traditional, sort of old school stuff. You know, players like Herb Ellis and Joe Pass, and you know, I'm trying to think who else I was listening to at the time. Jim Hall, although I wouldn't call him so much traditional. But anyway, and Paul Whitney, my first teacher, turned me on to players like John Schofield, Pat Metheny, Mike Stern. You know, even Alan Holdsworth, Frank Gambale, those types of players, which really opened up my head, and it's, you know, it went on from there.
So he was in Adelaide?
He was in Adelaide, yeah. So this was in year 12, and I learnt from him for about probably, you know, whatever a school year is, like 10 months or whatever it is, and then I had another teacher for about 6 months after that called Tony Catalano, who's a brilliant guitar player, and he had another sort of concept again. He was trying to get me, you know, into the sort of to try and get me to be creative basically, and sort of because I was very much into just sort of ripping off stuff from records, and he was very much encouraging me to really improvise, you know what I mean, and get away from playing licks.
How did he go about that?
Just he explained to me stuff like motivic development, for example. You know, if you play a line like or something, that was a very basic example, but you would go on from there in a sort of logical way, sort of. You know what I mean? Like sort of, so that whatever it would continue on naturally, and you're actually developing an idea that you started with. You know what I mean? And
right.
Rather than just sort of going and then whatever, and moving away from that and throwing it all away. It's just to really develop on what you played. You know, what comes before the influences what happens next.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So a contextual sort of development.
Yeah.
Can I ask about your early gigging? You know, obviously you were in Adelaide. I suspect there would have been a lot of gigs around at that time.
Yeah, it started out pretty much just doing cover bands, and but Adelaide had a great sort of music scene. There was a very strong blues and R&B sort of underground thing, which actually the first gig I did was with a guy called Andrew Firth. That was my first real gig. We did a bit of touring, and he was a clarinet player from Adelaide. He sort of introduced me to a few people, and yeah, but there was a lot of cover band work, and you know, working in pubs and clubs.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It was very, very healthy. Quite late compared to Sydney, you know, but
yeah, that's right. It is. Yeah.
And you came to Sydney to further your career.
Yep, I did, and I really wanted to play with this drummer called Andrew Gander, who doesn't live here anymore. He's actually in Bangladesh, of all places.
Wow.
But and he was like a hero of mine ever since I first heard him when I was sort of 18.
How did you come across him?
He was playing with Mark Isaacs actually at the Montsalvat Jazz Festival in Victoria,
Right.
and I was just walking past the venue, which was an old church or something, and then I just heard this drumming, like it was incredible. I thought, you know, it can't be someone from Australia, and sure enough, it was Andrew Gander, you know, the Sydney drummer. And so I became obsessed with him, and I'm going to move to Sydney. I'm going to play with him, and I did. He was one of the first people that I sort of hooked up with. I actually paid for him to give me a lesson, sort of thing, and we just sort of I went with Sam Dixon, a bass player friend of mine, and we just played some tunes. And fortunately, he really liked my playing, and he ended up sort of taking me under his wing and introducing me to pretty well everyone around. You know what I mean? Which was a huge help.
Yeah. What happened in that lesson?
Well, we just, like I said, we just played a few tunes, and we just played jazz basically. And sometimes we would just sort of we picked sort of standard tunes, and then we just sort of picked a groove, like, or a time signature. We'd say let's play something in 7, and might just be an open thing. And so we just played, and yeah, it was just great fun actually. It wasn't actually a lesson as such, you know what I mean? It was just I was more just paying for the privilege, you know, of playing with him. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually.
Well, everyone says that, and I think it was a great idea. Yeah, actually, I sort of commend myself on my, forethought, whatever. Yeah.
Well, I do remember seeing you launch it. I got there so late. You were on your last tune. So, but I was really impressed with you. Everyone had been talking about you at the time at the basement.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk about that night?
Oh, yeah, it's a long time ago.
The place was packed.
Yeah, it was. Well, I think, you know, I had a bit of help from because that was an ABC record, and they had a bunch of people sort of come down. But yeah, that was a great night. I don't remember it too clearly, but it was, in fact, I think that was just about a few nights after that I made my first trip to New York, which was great. But
yeah.
Well,
everyone was talking about James Muller then.
Yeah, is that right?
Made quite a splash.
Yeah, I think that again, that's a lot of those thanks to Andrew and sort of him sort of helping me out. But yeah, I was very lucky actually when I first moved to Sydney. This was in 1996. A whole bunch of great Sydney jazz guitar players had moved out of Sydney. Like the sort of Steve McKenna had gone, Carl Orr had just left, Carl Dewhurst had just gone, and there was another guy, Peter Zografakis, a brilliant player.
Off the radar.
Well, he was not at that time. He just joined James Morrison's band.
All right.
So and then so there was sort of this sort of empty sort of position really that needed to be filled for a sort of contemporary sort of jazz guitarist, and I showed up and it was sort of, so there was a lot of luck there, you know, as well as, you know, whatever ability I have. I think it was just a great time to show up, and it was purely by accident, you know. So yeah.
Could I go back to Andrew Gander? What was it in his playing you really liked?
Well, I think it was just a combination of, you know, all the things that one does like about, you know, anyone's playing. He had a great sound, he had a great, amazing technique. He seemed very well rounded. He could play sort of lots of different styles. He had a great sort of jazz thing and a great fusion thing and a great sort of, you know, rock thing, and he could play just the most mind-bogglingly sort of complex sort of stuff, but also he had a beautiful touch, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's just a consummate sort of, you know, brilliant player. Yeah.
What was it that attracted you to jazz in the first place?
Well, I think I sort of, whenever I'd heard it when I was younger, I always liked just the feel of it, the groove of it, or something, and I always thought, oh, I must check jazz out sort of later, because I sort of liked the vibe of it. And as I said, I think just sort of, I always liked the sort of more complex sounding harmony in music, you know what I mean, and so I was just naturally drawn to, and jazz has got that sort of quite complex sort of harmonic thing, and it was just time. I think by the time I was sort of 16, I just checked out enough rock music and I wanted to move on, and I think, you know, I had to go that way. I mean, I was never interested in going the other, I mean, technical sort of side, which would be shredding or something like that. I just really never, I mean, I'd be impressed with it for sort of 5 minutes and then I'd sort of be a bit worn, sort of. So I'm glad I never went down that path, but so I went to jazz, and I love it, you know.
Well, I've seen you quite a few times here in Sydney, and I can see guitar players across the board, you know, whether they're country, heavy metal, rock, jazz, whatever, they're going to find something in your playing that will be of interest.
All right. Well, I guess I have a pretty broad taste. I mean, all those sort of styles of music you mentioned, I like them all to varying degrees, and I've tried to sort of work out sort of how those musics sort of click, what makes them tick, and how it works. So there's a little bit of all of those things in my playing, I guess. So hopefully that sort of, you know, a heavy metal play. I mean, I used to love heavy metal. So
who did you listen to in that genre?
Oh, let's see. Well, you know, Iron Maiden, sort of Black Sabbath. Who else was there? Like Gary Moore. You know, like not the really sort of dark, heavy stuff. You know, but it was, you know, that sort of 80s. Guns N' Roses. Was that classed heavy metal?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Can I ask about your time in New York? You've been there a couple of times now, huh?
Yep. I've been there, I think, about 5 times now. And usually I'm not there for that long, but it's just a great place to go to get some inspiration, and just the level over there of musicianship is just astonishing. You know, it's a whole other thing. But I've gone over there and recorded, you know, that record, Kaboom. That I did that in 2005 with the great Bill Stewart, you know, John Schofield's drummer, and that's also with Matt Penman on bass. He's a Kiwi bassist that's sort of been living in New York for sort of 10, 15 years now, and yeah.
Boy, that would have been a heavy session.
That was terrifying, actually. I didn't sleep for, I mean, I had jet lag anyway. I was only there for a week, and then the whole night before the actual session, I didn't sleep a wink, literally, and I just thought, wow, I mean, I hadn't been sleeping well anyway, and then didn't sleep at all, and I thought, this is going to be a disaster, and then got in there, and it was pretty cool.
How did you record? Was it like live? You were in different booths, or?
Yeah, we were. We were in different. We had our own little spaces, which wasn't ideal, but yeah.
So it was instantaneous composition with your soloing and.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing worked out or anything.
No, nothing at all. The only thing that's overdubbed on there is the there's a couple of things that double tracked the heads, but no, it was all completely just, you know, one take. And mostly first takes too. There was, I think, a couple of second takes on there, but
yeah. Well, I'm sure they would have been very impressed.
Oh, don't know about that. I mean, they said nice things afterwards, but you never know. I mean, I was definitely very impressed at the end of it with them. Yeah.
So who else have you played with over there?
Oh, good. I play with Sean Wayland a lot when I go over there. He's a mate of mine, the Sydney keyboard player. He's actually just about to come out and do a tour with a great drummer called Mark Juliana, New York guy. It's just been with sort of lots of different players under Sean's sort of name, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do gigs there?
Yeah, I played at the 55 bar a few times, again with Sean, and where else? I can't even think of the names of them. But mainly I've been there to sort of listen or record, or I've done quite a few recordings there.
When you look for members of the band that you're playing with under your own steam, what is it that you're looking for with them?
Drums are the first thing that we know when I listen to music. The drums are the thing that really sort of hit me first, and it's the same thing when I'm actually playing. So I like a drummer to be really I like a busy drummer, as in busy as in he plays quite a lot, not busy as in he's got lots of gigs, but and I like to be very interactive, and I want to have a great groove and a great sound, and so I'm not asking too much, I don't think. And sorry, and I like a bass player to be very much the anchor in the band, to be sort of being pretty simple, and I sort of like the bass player to be the foundation, and the guitar and the drums are sort of going AWOL, you know what I mean, on top. So
yeah. What about keyboard players?
Well, I tend to sort of avoid them. I mean, I love listening to keyboard, but the guitar and keyboard together can be really sort of, unless you've got actual parts worked out, they can really get in the way of each other. You know what I mean?
So is that what you do with Sean?
Well, yes, definitely. Sean actually writes specific voicings for the guitar to play, so we're not clashing or, you know. And I do a lot of laying out in that band, which I'm happy to do too. I'm just pretty much play the heads, and then I'll solo, and I'll leave all the comping to him.
So kind of like the same sort of role as a sax or horn player would have?
Yeah, almost, yeah. Except I can play a few more notes, obviously, when required.
You do quite a variety of things. You're quite the sideman too, playing with people like James Morrison. Which do you prefer, to play on your own or to play as a sideman?
Doesn't really worry me. I like doing both. I think too much of either of them. It's funny, when I've done tours with my own band, which generally never lasted any longer than about 7 or 8 gigs or something, I actually get really sort of, not sick of it or whatever, but I just sort of, I need something else, you know what I mean? I've sort of, and the same thing happens, you know, if I'm just doing sideman stuff, I really want to do my own thing. So it's just about striking a balance. You know?
What is it like playing with James Morrison?
It's great. It's scary, you know. He's a very high energy sort of musician, and it can be hard to sort of keep up with that at times. And it's sort of the music is sort of geared for the way he plays, you know what I mean? So I'm sort of going in trying to do his thing, which is great. It's fun to do, but it's sort of it can be hard to sort of keep up with him after, you know, because he's brilliant, you know, and yeah, and also in James's band, your solos are pretty short, so you don't have a lot of time to sort of develop anything. You just got to go in there, bang, and try and be sort of exciting immediately, you know what I mean? which I find really challenging. You know, I love it when you got a bit of time to tell a bit of a story, and yeah.